The night rain struck the city like it held a personal grudge, beating against rusted rooftops and empty streets, washing the world in cold silver. And in the middle of that storm, with thunder rolling like a warning from the heavens, a poor single father named Daniel rushed down the deserted road carrying his sleeping daughter in his arms. His jacket was thin, soaked straight through, and his boots splashed through puddles as if the world was determined to slow him down. He wasn't thinking about himself, though he wasn't thinking about the hearing he had the next morning, the one that would decide whether he would keep custody of his daughter or lose the last person he had left. All he cared about was getting little Lily home before the storm worsened. But fate, cruel and strangely beautiful, had a way of placing people in your path when you least expected it. Before the first viewer engagement request, please pause for a moment if you believe kindness matters, and that second chances can change lives. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more stories like this. As Daniel hurried, something caught his attention, a flicker of hazard lights on the side of the road. He almost didn't stop. He had no business getting involved with strangers tonight. He had no time, no energy, and truthfully, no room for more trouble. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way the rain pounded against that lonely car, or the faint silhouette of someone inside, barely moving against his better judgment. He approached. Inside the car sat a pregnant woman, soaked, trembling, and clearly in distress. Her hands were pressed against her belly, her breathing sharp and uneven, her hair plastered to her cheeks, the window fogged with every quick, shallow exhale. In that moment, Daniel's exhaustion vanished. He didn't know her name, her story, or the storm she carried inside her. But he recognized fear. He recognized helplessness, and he knew exactly how it felt to have no one. Daniel knocked gently on the window, and the woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide with pain. She couldn't open the door. It was jammed. The engine had died. Her phone battery was gone. She'd been stranded for nearly an hour in the freezing rain, and her contractions were starting. Daniel forced the door open with his shoulder, lifted her out, and guided her toward the only shelter nearby, an old bus stop with a cracked roof. He handed Lily his jacket and wrapped the woman in his shirt instead. The rain hit his bare skin like needles, but he didn't flinch. He kept speaking softly, trying to steady her breathing every few moments. Lily reached out from under the jacket and touched the woman's hand as if assuring her she wasn't alone. The contractions grew stronger, the night grew colder, and the storm refused to let up. Daniel didn't have a car, didn't have money, and didn't have a phone that worked reliably in this weather, but he had determination. He shouted for help at every passing vehicle, but none stopped. Most didn't even slow down. Minutes turned into what felt like an eternity. The woman clutched his arm, gasping, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel held her, trying to keep her calm while Lily stood close, watching with worried eyes. Far too old for her age. Finally, a distant pair of headlights pierced through the sheets of rain. Daniel stepped into the road, waving both arms, ready to risk getting hit if it meant saving the woman. The car slowed, stopped, and together, they rushed her to the hospital. She was taken in immediately. Daniel, drenched, shivering, and exhausted beyond words, sank into one of the plastic chairs in the waiting area. Lily curled up asleep against him. He didn't know the woman's name. She didn't know his. But he had done his part. He stayed until he was sure she was stable. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't expect anything. Once the nurse assured him the mother and baby were safe, he simply nodded, picked up Lily, and walked home under the fading rain. He had no idea that the woman he saved tonight would be the same judge presiding over his custody hearing in the morning, and she would certainly remember him. But he didn't remember her. Not in the courtroom, not when she walked in wearing her black robe, glowing with dignity and authority instead of rain-soaked fear. Not even when she looked straight at him with the kind of recognition that softened her stern expression. Daniel only saw a judge who had the power to take his daughter away. The courtroom wasn't crowded, but it felt suffocating. Daniel sat alone, holding Lily's tiny hand. He couldn't afford a lawyer. He couldn't afford much of anything. His wife had died 2 years earlier, leaving him with medical debt, a heart full of grief, and a child to protect with. Every breath he had, he was accused of not being able to provide a stable environment by people who had never seen how he cut his meals in half so Lily could eat more, how he walked miles to work to save the bus fare, how he read bedtime stories until his voice cracked. The opposing lawyer portrayed him as a struggling, unfit father. His small apartment was labeled inadequate. His job as a part-time warehouse worker was deemed unreliable. Every flaw was magnified, every hardship twisted. But through it all, the judge observed him quietly, thoughtfully. Strange tension lingered on her face, a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and something deeper, almost protective finally, after hours of presentation and argument. She called for a short recess when she returned. Her decision was steady and clear. She ruled in Daniel's favor, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because she had seen firsthand what kind of man he was. She saw the father, who wrapped a stranger in his last dry clothing. She saw the protector, who shielded his daughter from the storm. She saw the human being who gave selflessly with nothing to give. In her ruling, she emphasized that love, character, and effort mattered more than material comfort. She declared that Lily was safest with the parent who would walk barefoot through a storm just to help someone else. Daniel didn't understand why her voice wavered as she spoke. He didn't know why she kept glancing at Lily as if she already cared about her, and when it was over, when he realized he'd won, he fell to his knees, overwhelmed with relief. Hugging Lily so tightly she squeaked as the courtroom emptied. The judge quietly stepped down from the bench, instead of leaving through her usual private exit. She approached him. Her steps were slow, gentle, thoughtful. She stood in front of him, and when Daniel looked up, confused, she spoke softly. She told him about the storm, about the car, about the baby, safe and born healthy because of him. For a long moment, Daniel was speechless. He hadn't expected thanks. He certainly hadn't expected this revelation. The air felt warm, suddenly heavy with emotion. He tried to apologize for not recognizing her, but she shook her head and told him he had no reason to. What mattered was that he helped. What mattered was that he chose kindness in a world that often punished it. She told him she had been struggling that night, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Her husband had left her months earlier when he found out about the pregnancy. She'd been handling everything alone while judging everyone else's lives from the bench. But that night, she said, a poor single father showed her what real strength looked like. He didn't judge her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He simply helped. He reminded her what humanity was supposed to be, and because of that, she vowed never to forget him. After hearing her words, Daniel found tears in his eyes, not from pride but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, truly seen. For the first time in years later, he learned she had quietly ordered a social worker to visit him, not to evaluate him, but to help him, connecting him with resources, assistance programs, and support networks, not out of favoritism, but because she believed kindness should be repaid with opportunity. Over the next few months, their paths crossed unexpectedly, sometimes for check-ins about his progress, sometimes after she requested updates, sometimes at the hospital when he visited her baby with flowers Lily insisted on picking. At first, their connection was built on gratitude and respect. Over time, it grew into something deeper, something soft, warm, and healing. She saw in Daniel a man who refused to break. No matter how life pushed him, he saw in her a woman strong enough to build others while rebuilding herself. Life had broken both of them in different ways, and life, in its strange poetic timing, had brought them back together. Before the emotional ending, if this story moved you even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps our storytelling alive. Months passed, seasons changed, and one evening, standing outside the same hospital where they first crossed paths, Daniel held Lily in one arm and the judge's baby in the other while she watched with tears in her eyes. She told him she'd never forgotten how he held her together on the worst night of her life. He smiled and told her she saved his life too, just in a different way. They were no longer the storm-beaten strangers they had once been. They were two souls who learned that fate sometimes hides blessings inside hardships. Two parents, once broken, now building something gentle and steady together. Special request. Before we end, comment below. Do you believe kindness always finds its way back, and in the quiet glow of the setting sun, with their children's laughter echoing softly, they both realize something simple and extraordinary. Sometimes the people you save end up saving you right back.